Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast, the space for entrepreneurs on a quest for unwavering certainty and purpose. I'm your host, Lauren, and each episode is a compass guiding you through authentic conversations, unraveling the mysteries of your human design chart, and offering tools from the remarkable guest. Join me as we embark on a journey to manifest greatness and create a life aligned with our deepest purpose. This is the space where misfits find their enlightenment. Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am your host, Lauren, and in today's episode, I have Rachel. She is a multi-award-winning transformational coach and wellness therapist. Welcome, Rachel. I'm so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your story, kind of, the Cliff Notes version of where you were and then where you are today. How did your entrepreneurial journey start?
Wow. Well, I'm Rachel Farnsworth. It's great to be here, Lauren. How it all started was accidental, really. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to be a spiritual midwife or a transformational coach and wellness therapist. It's just life points you in certain directions. And it's actually my daughters where the story begins, I think, really. Although I'd gone through a lot of emotionally abusive relationships that I didn't realize I was in because that was so normal to me. And I'm sure you can probably relate. And I know a lot of your listeners can too. But my story really I want to talk about is where my daughter had an autoimmune disease. She was diagnosed when she was a year old. It was juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which is arthritis in children with no known cause. I didn't know little kids could get that. And she was a year old, and we were doing all the things that we thought we should. We're going to all the hospital trips. She was taking medication. It was making her violently sick every weekend, but we thought that was the best thing we could do. So that was what we were doing. And every time Fix You by Coldplay came on the radio, it seemed to be every time we were going to the hospital. And every time that played, I was just sending this little silent prayer. If anybody was listening, can somebody, universe, just sort of send me something to help her if there is anything. But I can't Google search it because I don't know what I'm looking for. I just don't know what to look, whatever it needs. Anyway, so what happened was, I was going through my second divorce, although it was leading up to that. And my daughter and my son had decided to go and live with their dad because it wasn't a very nice environment at home. And which I didn't blame them, but I didn't know who I was if I wasn't a full-time mum. And anyway, so it gave me space to think about what I wanted, which is the first time forever. And so I decided to be, one of my spiritual friends said, I always thought psychotherapy would be a good thing for you to train in. I'm like, well, no, I don't think so. But it did mean that I started to look at counselling. So that was what I was going to do. That felt really safe. But interestingly, the course I picked, which was local to me and a face-to-face course, you had to do hypnotherapy in the first year, which I wasn't interested in. So there's my little bite-size bullet. If someone had said to me, train in hypnotherapy, I'd have been absolutely no. But because it was the carrot at the end of it, I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to suck it up. So I did. But as I was doing the homework, I got another course came up because I was Google searching, and it was advanced hypnotherapy. So I trained in that and the basic course that I was doing simultaneously. And interestingly, I qualified in June 2018, and my daughter was having a flare-up in the October. So I was just going to file that certificate, wasn't going to do anything with it, except my daughter was in pain. And I knew that hypnotherapy had helped other people to reduce pain at least. And so I said to her, isn't it worth having a go? She said, yeah, I suppose. She's a teenager. So she was like reluctantly said yes. But we didn't just reduce her pain. We were able to get to her unique personal root cause of why the autoimmune disease was there. And in that session, she was able to release it. And she was doing all this sort of moving around, jiffling about on the bed that we were working on in her bedroom. I said, what was that all about? She said, all my joints were just clicking into place, Mum. I was like, are you serious? Are you winding me up? She goes, no, I'm being serious. All my joints felt like they were just popping back into place. It's like, wow, this is incredible. Are you sure? I'm still not convinced that she's not just acting. But
Right.
the fact is, we were going all to the hospital, doing all the 6 months checks. And even though she was in the middle of a flare up when we had the session, they said to her, oh, she must have outgrown it. I said, how do you do that in the middle of a flare up? And they're like, we don't know. Oh, well, I know what we did, but they didn't want to know what I did. They weren't interested. But
Right.
it just shows you that healing at the emotional root cause is key to all this stuff. And every session I've worked with clients around the world, and every client has taught me that the body speaks to us in pain and symptoms, and where the symptoms are tells a deeper story of what's going on. And that's what I do now. That is my full-time job, and I just love it so much.
I was going to say, I love that. And I feel like, especially a lot of listeners, even just when I went through my own journey, and even now that I think about it, my own mentor right now, she and a couple other people that she's also connected to have autoimmune disorders. And I realized I always wondered, I just always thought, like, yes, Western medicine is very good. Yes, we need antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we
Yeah,
need this.
yeah, sure, we do. Yeah.
But right. But it's just like, I never was the person. I mean, I went to talk therapy for years. I would always say, like, nobody's listening to me. Like, nobody's like, I don't feel like that I'm getting better. I feel like it's like a Band-Aid on the problem. And it's just like, take this pill, and it's just like, no, stop it. I don't want to do that anymore. And I feel like same thing with you. I can definitely resonate when I started actually looking at the root cause of all of my issues. Then I realized, oh, so I heal this holistically, or however I'm doing it. If it's,
Mm-hmm.
somatic workouts, if it's yoga,
Mm-hmm.
if it's actual energy healing or whatever, hypnosis, whatever it is, inner child healing, it could be whatever modality
Mm-hmm.
tool that I have, like that I use. The shamanic journey now, so it's like, it's all different. And then I'm like, wow, like even to the point that, like, I don't even think I've ever talked about this before, but I don't really care. I'm going to say it. I used to get cold sores all the time. So I was like, I bet you I can heal from that too.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, it was like they would flare up when I got stressed out, or that was like, I feel like every other couple weeks, and I realized, well, let me use the shamanic journey to figure out how I can heal my cold sores. And of course, I do, like, deep dived into that, and I don't get cold sores anymore. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it was just, I say it's magic. It's really not, but
Yeah.
it's like, I was like, wow. So this is like, that was that proof to me that I was like, wow, you can heal. Like, our bodies can heal. It's just that we have to listen to them. So I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of
Absolutely.
tell, yeah, I was gonna say,
Mm.
can you kind of tell the listeners that, like, how would it, so if somebody, just say if somebody's listening to this right now, and they have an autoimmune disorder, that they have gone through tons of blood work and tons of whatever testing they went through, and there's no um quote unquote cure, or like they're not being healed
Solution.
from it.
Yeah.
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 What would you say to them on, like, how they can kind of, obviously they can come work with you, but what would you say to them, like, on a symptom of, like, how they can do this themselves if they're not really in that space of trusting or believing that this could work? Like, what would you say to them? Like, where would you have them start?
Okay, well, actually, I would start by saying that an autoimmune disease is really like you're feeling under attack. It's your body. That's what you're saying. So, what was going on for you emotionally when those symptoms began would be a great place to start, or what was going on prior to that. It would give you a bit of an insight into what's going on. I've actually got a book I've just published,
Oh, yeah.
and so, and it's called Decoding the Body's Messages: Unlock Your Wisdom to Heal. So in that, it talks about the link between trauma and your symptoms. There's an A to Z in there as well. So it's deep diving into everything from acne to warts and anything in between that, so that you can see the emotional root behind it. And then the unlocking part is the antidote to trauma is self-love. So it's all about how can you love yourself. So it's about taking your power back. There's really straightforward but very essential techniques that are really easy to put into practice. So it can kind of be life before the book and life after, because it's about balancing your energy centers. It's about giving yourself more confidence. It's about trusting you. So all of that is in the unlocking section of it as well. So, and it's available on Amazon. and it's paperback and on Kindle. So it's and I want it to be on Audible as well. So that's my next task, working out the tech for that.
And I'll make sure, I'll make sure when that we have that link in the description box, wherever, if somebody's listening to this or on YouTube, they'll be able to
send that to you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is your body speaking to you. Nothing is random. It's your body waving. It's like a vehicle on a dashboard of a vehicle, really. If you've got a warning light come on, like your brake lights or tire pressure, there's the warning light, and as soon as you put your oil in or you've pumped the tires up, warning light goes off, and it's the same with your body.
I love that. Yeah. That's actually a very good way to look at it for people that are like, oh no, I've had this for years. Or the one thing that she wasn't a client, it was just in my daughter's karate class. It was just another mom. And she said to me, asked, of course, she's like, what do you do for a living? I was kind of talking to her about stuff and very surface level stuff, because most people don't, I usually say I'm an entrepreneur, I have my own business. That's very surface level, and they're like, oh, what do you do? And then that's when I kind of go into it. And she had said to me, which I think a couple of clients probably have said this to me that I don't remember, but it stuck out to me when she said it. She said, I don't remember my childhood. And then intuitively I was thinking, well, that just means you have a lot of trauma. But I didn't say that. I was like, oh, interesting. Why do you feel that is? And she was like, I don't know. I never really thought about it until you asked me that question. And one of the reasons why I love doing my podcast is because I've been told, and I know that I have the ability to ask really good questions for people. They can talk about themselves and kind of actually be able to feel, how they feel. Because I know for me, when I first started, the first time I went to therapy when I was a young child, even when, I was in therapy when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, when the therapist would ask me, well, how do you feel? And I was like, what does that even mean? I don't even know how to feel, right? That was not taught to me. My emotions were not taught to me. I was always taught to suppress them, be quiet. You can't act like that, all that stuff, and it's not that my parents are bad. It's just, they were taught the same way. So they didn't know how to take, right? So when I ask people that, I notice now I always have to take myself back to when I started, when somebody asked me that question, well, how does it feel? Most people in society right now, they don't know what feeling means. It's all about suppressing, right? Because of all that trauma. So I thought that was very interesting when she told me, I don't remember my childhood, which means it doesn't necessarily mean that she had a bad childhood. It just means that she's probably had a lot of trauma that she's probably not aware of. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny, isn't it? Funny, not funny, but curious, funny.
Yeah.
How the subconscious mind, it pulls like a veil across it, like, oh, you don't want to see that. Yeah. And there's so many things that clients then say to me, I'd forgotten about that completely. And it's like, the subconscious mind is so very crafty like that. It'll remind you of, something that's not too bad or not too traumatic, but there's that thing, and it doesn't have to be being held at knife point kind of trauma. It can be anything. I've worked with clients that have been that, but I've also worked with a client who went back, because I work with hypnotherapy, so it's about them seeing scenes in their mind. And there was one lady who said, I'm at school and I'm having my photograph taken. I'm in the wrong place. This is not the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me. So your mind's brought it up for a reason. Let's just have a look at it. And she said, oh, so it was just on surface level. She was just having a photograph taken. I said to her, how do you feel? She started crying. I said, what? She goes, I don't belong in this school. I've just left. We've had to go back to have our photograph taken. It was some sort of celebratory thing, some carnival or whatever. They've had to have the photograph taken. But she didn't belong in this school because she just left. They'd moved schools, and she didn't really feel like she belonged in the other school either, because she'd only just joined. So she didn't feel, and not belonging is a big wound. So that was a big, it's not the worst thing she's ever happened to her, but it's deeply impacting. I don't belong is a massive wound, especially when you're a kid. So that just shows that the mind does know what to bring up when it's necessary.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've always loved, psychology, and I've always loved, the mind. And I always say that the mind is a very powerful thing, because, I always used to think or had this belief around like my ego was bad or my subconscious was bad or I shouldn't, all that stuff. Cause I was always a dreamer, like my whole life. I was always that person that are like, but what if this is this way? And, I've always been that, I have a Pisces moon and Pisces rising. So I'm a big dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what about that? Even now, it's like, my boyfriend will say, God, it's like, come down. It's like, come down from the clouds, Lauren. You got to come back down. I'm like, this, what if we can just do this? And it's just like, that's just how
Mm.
my body is and how my mind is. And I always knew that there was always something bigger and better for me. But I always too, when I was a kid, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I, named this the Enlightened Misfits, because I feel like everybody that comes on to this podcast or listens to this podcast doesn't feel has healed from that wound of not belonging, because it was huge for me
Mm-hmm.
anyway, because I always
Mm-hmm.
felt like I don't belong here on earth, or why did I have to come here? And I realize now I didn't come here just to be here. I came here for a greater purpose, right? Like most of
Mm-hmm.
us, like that are,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual mentor, healer, light worker, whatever whatever you call yourself. I feel like a lot of us are waking up to the idea that we didn't belong for a reason, because that's not why we
Yes.
came here, right? So
Yes.
I love
Yes.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
So
I'm just.
I'm sorry. Go
I was
ahead.
just. I was just wondering whether to share a story about when my mum died. I had a dream,
Yeah, sure.
and it's about not belonging, because I always felt like I didn't. And anyway, in the dream, so my mum died in 2021, and about 6 weeks later, I had a dream, and in the dream, um, she'd elected to die the following day, and my dad rather, and my sister were all having a go at me because I needed to stop her doing that. Anyway, so I just said, well, look, it's her choice, she's on the planet, it's her choice, her will, whatever. Um, and I remember sort of coming out of the dream and shouting, why? And then going straight back in, which is quite unusual in the same place. So I
Mhm.
I then said to her, Mum, why are you doing this? And she said, because you were here, Rachel, to wake us all up, to show us how to love. But
Wow.
we all three of us ignored that. And it's too late for me. So I'm electing to die tomorrow. And it was like, oh, that was a big clarity moment of like, oh, right, that kind of makes sense. It felt like a truth when it hits your body, it's a truth
Oh,
or
yeah.
not, and it
Yeah.
felt like that. So it was quite a weird dream to have, but the message behind it was quite powerful.
Yeah. And I feel like, even now with grief, probably like, with your mom's passing, I feel like, I've always believed in death differently than the rest of the world, just because I understood it from a deeper level. I feel like I've had a lot of people that had passed over, and I always would ask, I don't even know if at the time, I would be like, can somebody help me? And like, it would just like magically something would happen. Like, it's not magic. It's just how the world works. But I would do the same thing with like, even now it's like, or if I'm struggling, or if it's like I forget to ask, I'm a challenge, if it not struggling, I don't want to say struggling, but like having a challenge, or um just knowing that I have spirit guides, or we each have a spirit guide with us that's here with us the
Mm-hmm.
entire time that we're here. And it takes me back to the same thing when you talk about your mom. My grandmother, I looked at her as like, we've had and my mom, she listens to the podcast, but my mom, I always tell her, you just didn't know how close me and grandma were. And nobody in our family knew. So it was like a hush hush thing, and she's always, I would tell her all my dreams. I would tell her, I seen this, or, I could see auras, I can see energy, all that stuff. And I would tell her. And then once she had passed on, I felt like, who am I going to talk to now? Because nobody's going to believe me. Even now to this day, I would just say randomly, oh, I seen a sign. And my mom kind of just looks at me. She's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay. So it's like that belief of like, why do I feel like I have to it was just like, how when you have that person that just believes what you say, because you don't have to explain it, it just
Mm-hmm.
makes sense to them too, right? So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like for my mom, it was like she's much more open to that stuff. But now that I have my daughter, she's 4.5. I just can keep that belief in her, because she does see that too, you know? So,
Mhm.
when my grandmother passed away, I realized, oh, I can still talk to her. She's just, I can't see her anymore, you know? So
Mhm.
it was a huge moment too, because I feel like, she didn't talk. She was a survivor of breast cancer for 7 years. So towards the end of her time here on Earth, she was not really talking. You know, she was on hospice, and you know, she wasn't really talking. But when I went to go say bye to her, you know, when they were gonna, you know, basically,
Mm.
you know, she was her basically she wasn't here anymore. I knew I could see her spirit standing in the corner, and it was just her physical body, and I didn't tell my mom right away. I told her probably years after that, but I could see her in the corner, and she was like watching her body. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
everybody saying
Mm.
goodbye. And I could just hear, I touched her hand and I could just hear, I'm always here. And it was like that moment of like, okay. So
Mm.
I had obviously, you know, you have to go through the grieving process and all that stuff. But
Mm.
that moment is what I
Mhm.
remember, and I wanted to understand it more. At the time, I was only in seventh grade, so I didn't really understand all of that stuff. And we didn't really have Google. We're still using
No.
encyclopedias. You know, I didn't know, I couldn't look all that. But later on in life, that moment was like, I can remember that they're still here. You just have to ask, you know? So
Mm.
I feel like
Mm.
that really helped with a lot of my grieving when I lost my best friend, you know, like a lot of different times when I've lost different people. And I tell people this too, like, or even like dogs passing, you know, they're still here. They're just, you can't physically see them anymore. You can use them
Mhm.
as, you know, they can help, they're your guides now. So I feel like that's huge when you're going through something, when you just lost
Mm.
somebody. Obviously, you have to go
Mm.
through that process, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I think
definitely,
so. And Dolores Cannon's a great lady to read
oh
or
yeah.
to watch videos as well, to get into
Yes.
that sort of belief and sort of to see what's going on, because she had far more sessions than I've had so far with clients. And so, you know, her
Yeah.
experience is really, really amazing. And well, I'm also a silent counselor, so I know how to release grief and by just using acupressure points. So I was doing that in the supermarket. It was once I was queuing up for all my groceries on the checkout, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to cry. This is awful and so embarrassing. So all I did was just put my index finger and middle finger on my thumb, on the side of my nail, and just breathe and just acknowledge and release it. So I'm doing it really quietly and nobody's knowing what I'm doing, but it did help no end, because it does come in waves. All of a sudden it sort of hits you like
Yeah.
a brick, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that was really good to be able to use that as a little secret technique that nobody knew I was doing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's also good. I'm gonna actually start using that too, because I feel like there's just, I always say that I'm like really emotional. Like just my whole
Mm.
being and my whole soul is just really emotional. And I just, you know, because I've heard my whole life, you know, you're a crybaby, stop crying, all that stuff.
Mm.
Now I just feel like I'm not normal if I'm not crying. Like it's
Yeah.
just I cry, you know, like when I'm happy
Mm.
or like, you know, when I'm sad or whatever. But I feel like now if I hold it in or resist it, it hurts. Like it actually
Mm.
hurts, you know?
Mm.
So it's like, I'm going to cry. I'm going to go over here and cry. Maybe I'm not going to cry in public, but sometimes I
Mm.
do. Like I just,
Mm.
or if like if I'm on a, session with a client or a
Mm.
podcast guest that they're talking about their story and it resonates with me, I could tear up. And,
Mhm.
it's normal. It's because I'm feeling that, because I'm
Mm.
so cleared out that I'm feeling that energy. And it's just, like holding space for people. And I feel like, you know, a lot of people that are struggling right now, that they feel like, they can't cry, they have to do it by themselves, or they can't ask for help. And I feel like, that technique, if they're at work
Mm.
or they're at the
Mm.
grocery store, you just, that
Mm.
technique that you said, I
Yeah,
think will help
absolutely.
so many people. Yeah.
It does. It's amazing. It's so simple. It's like being your own therapist.
Right. Yes. And I mean, I always believe that everybody needs a mentor, but if there's a
Mm.
period of life that, maybe
Mm.
financially you can't afford somebody or you need to do it, you could do
Mm.
self-help, that would
Mm.
be technically, that would be a huge technique. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're very
That's
welcome.
awesome. So, when you talk about like when your entrepreneur journey, business, and if there's an entrepreneur listening to this and they're having a challenge, and that, going back to Tracy, maybe like a business challenge, back to their emotional calls, what would you say to them to kind of help them, like if they are stuck in their business, or if they're stuck just somewhere with trauma? What would be something that you would say like could be an emotional root cause to that?
There's always an emotional root cause to pretty much everything, isn't there? The subconscious mind is so wonderful. It's 95% of everything we do, think, feel, and believe about ourselves. So it's always a belief that we've had. Where did that belief come from? Probably from childhood, when you were 3, 4, 5, whatever. So the block is like money stories. We learned all that stuff, didn't we, from being a child, seeing your mum and dad arguing over money or whatever, and then you think, oh, I don't want any of that, thank you very much. I don't know why I can't get clients. It's all that is all about the subconscious mind is there to keep you safe. It's not like your best friend, it's just there to keep you within your little perimeters of safeness. It might not be the best thing you want, but that is, that's what it knows. It only knows what's in the past. It doesn't know what you want in the future. So that's what's going on. So yeah, it's always emotional. So what you could say is, well, what was going on? What does this remind me of? What is this like when I was a child? What am I, where's this power, where does it link to? How do I feel? Well, this is, and what does it make me remind me of when I was a child, is a great way of sort of doing it. And also then start writing down what you want, focus on what you do want, not what you don't want, and start writing that blueprint, seeing yourself as that overall arcing, where you see yourself, what's your big vision. And then from that perspective, as you're seeing yourself in that big vision of you, how would she act or he act? What decisions would they make in this now moment if you'd already got that thing? And wear the clothes, or pretend you're wearing the clothes, or you're on the stage. How would you feel? What decisions are you making from that perspective? Even though you're washing your own mug up or something in the sink right this minute, what decisions would that you in the future take would be a great decision, great way of sort of starting to break those old subconscious beliefs. I think it really works for me anyway.
Yeah. Now, if you are like, just say if you have a client and she's an entrepreneur, and one of her, challenges is that she can't attract, or shouldn't say can't attract, but if she's attracting people that won't pay her, or, she's attracting people that, or she's not attracting anybody, like there's nobody, she's not signing up any clients, and she's making content, she's doing all the right things. What would you kind of say, how would you kind of help that, I'll just say woman. Let's just say woman.
Yeah. Okay. How would I help her? I would just sort of start shifting some energy around. That's the thing. Start writing, what is it you're doing? Sometimes we go through those though. It's not really your fault necessarily. It could just be that you've been busy. Maybe your energy's gone, maybe you could have just moved house, written a book, and then you're like, where's all the clients gone? Well, it's because your energy's like, give yourself a break. It could just be that. But it's just, we all have, we can't all have summer every season. It has to be a growth and it has to be a natural cycle. But it's just really sort of watching your energy, really. How are you feeling? How can you maybe get some music on would be a good thing to do. To just start, or clearing out a drawer, shifting some energy out, making space would be a good thing that you could start doing. Journaling as well, like I just was talked about, is that seeing yourself in that vision, and then what would you do? How would that what would your future you advise you? Like imagine that you've got your future you in a chair opposite. What would you say? What would she be saying to you? That would be a really good thing to do without actually enrolling somebody like you or me, to sort of give yourself some self-help.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love talking to my future you, because usually me right now knows what she's gonna say. I'm disappointing it. Yeah, no, I do love that, because I was going to say I actually just physically moved, and then I had obviously focused on moving. It takes a lot of energy, and of course I had other I had to sustain other clients and all that stuff, and then I finally felt like, okay, I think I can create something new, a new program. So it was like, it's interesting being in that new energy of like my normal, like just chaos. Life is chaos anyway, but it's like, being able to manage that type of energy, to, especially, I'm big into human design. So it's, more of like, how can I make sure I still align with my energy, because I do know what burnout feels like, and I'm not going down that road, so that's
Yeah,
a good way
that's
to
right.
put it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
before
great.
we wrap up, is there any other advice that you would give, an entrepreneur who maybe be struggling or having a challenge with trauma, that feels overwhelmed, um, just to address it?
Yeah, I think it's not scary. You've already lived it. It's just about reviewing it so that it can be understood and let go of. And it's a beautiful journey of self-discovery, because you're piecing the things together. It's like a jigsaw piece, and like, oh, that's interesting. I never realized that that one thing that happened that I'd forgotten about, had that was the missing piece of why I can't do whatever, why I can't stand on stage, why I can't, why I can't do videos, perhaps. Who knew that all that had linked, that one scene had linked to all that thing. Um and it's that's why it's beautiful, because it's just like, oh, now I get it, and now I can move forward. And I think that is the beautiful thing about it, because you're not come back next week and talk about it. It's piecing it together, empowering you so it can be let go of, and then you can start living your life with passion and purpose, and really, like you've got your roller skates on and you can actually go forward again.
Yeah, I love that. Now, is there, how can people get a hold of you? And is there anything, if somebody resonates with this conversation, what is the best way, how they can contact you and reach out to you? Or do you have a program that you always run, that they could do, if they are not, maybe if they can't, work with you one-on-one? Like, do you have any other offers that you are creating now, or it's your book that's an offer? How can
Yeah,
they get into your world, I should say?
well, okay, well, there's my website, which is wellnesswithrachel.co.uk. Rachel, Rachel. There is my quantum breakthrough program that consists of just 4 sessions, but it's amazing of how far you can go in just those 4 sessions, which is like a month of working with me, which is amazing. My Anxious to Awesome course is a self-study course which talks about and gives you that, like I was talking about the silent counseling, using your acupressure points, and it's yours for life, this course is, so you can teach your kids it as well, so it's teach the whole family, which is amazing. And then of course there's my book, Decoding the Body's Messages, Unlock Your Wisdom to Heal. And I've got a free Facebook group as well. I go live every Friday in there at 5 o'clock UK time, and I offer free Reiki, free energy healing on a Sunday at 9 o'clock. So just by being there, and then you get 2 free gifts in there too, which is Decoding the Body's Messages ebook, which is just basic thing about what your body's telling you. And then there's also Releasing Negative Self-Talk meditation as well. So there's loads of stuff in the free group.
Yeah, I love that. I'll make sure I put myself into that free group.
Oh yeah, it'd be great to welcome you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with somebody that you feel that would gain knowledge from listening. And make sure you check out her book and all of her links in the description box. If you're listening to this, they'll be in the description box. If you're watching this over on YouTube, they'll also be on the description box. So stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you are a current or inspiring to be fempreneur, suffering from the fear of being seen and or feel very triggered when you're building your business, reach out to me at The Mermaid Light about my Rich and Resilient Biz Baddies. This is a collective text message Voxer support group designed to help you heal your triggers and turn imposter syndrome into bad bitch energy. If you resonate with our conversations and insight, don't forget to subscribe, rate the show, and leave a review. Your feedback fuels our mission. Remember, your journey to unwavering certainty and purpose is ongoing. So please make sure you stay connected with us on social media. Keep manifesting greatness in your life. Until next time, this is Lauren from the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Stay enlightened, stay inspired, and keep manifesting your extraordinary path.